Hey, it's Emily Williams, the founder of I Heart My Life and your host of the I Heart My Life show. This is episode 79, The Power of Facebook Ads and Following Your Heart with Tara Zirker. So I met Tara a few years ago and we instantly became friends, but only recently did we finally get to meet in person. Honestly, she's one of the most beautiful people inside and out. She's so good at Facebook ads, and she's also an incredible rock star mom of two beautiful girls. Today's episode is not really about Facebook ads. We kind of get into it, but the truth is Tara has a super powerful story. It starts as an entrepreneur at age 14, being featured in magazines because of the little business she built in her parents' house. You're going to hear more about that and so much more on today's episode. So get prepared to be inspired, to really understand what it takes to pivot in your business and finally give yourself permission to do what it is your heart is calling you to do. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Tara.
Thank you. So good to be here, Emily.
I'm so excited to be here, and I feel blessed that I've actually finally met you in person after all these years. And you just came to our live event, which was incredible. So thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to say, Emily, you have built such an incredible community. That event was fire. It was so inspiring. And so I'm just so happy and grateful I got to hang out with you.
Totally. So we've known each other for a few years now, and I know that you have your incredible company, your awesome membership, but I know with everyone, every entrepreneur, there's always a backstory. There's always something that led us to this place. So I'd love for you to take us back and tell us how you kind of got here, how you began this beautiful journey in this company.
Oh, thank you. Well, like for everybody, it was definitely the windy road and sometimes the scenic route. But what happened was I started an agency years and years ago. We did everything, social media and SEO and blogging, newsletters. I mean, you name it, we did it. And one day we had a client who commissioned us to do their social media, started doing that. And they said, "You're so good at this. Would you just do ads as well?" And I was like, whoa, I know nothing about this. And they were like, "Yeah, we know. We want you to learn it." It was kind of the Wild West and ads were relatively new. It was for a hospitality company and they had an app. So it was, ads for an app. And basically I got in there, and because we had really tough investors, I had to learn ads number one, I had to learn them really well. But number two, I had to learn how to do some really interesting reporting. I had to learn a system that I could explain. Well, let's just say I had a system, but I had to be able to explain it to a room full of investors. And that forced me to create protocols and systems, and when do we scale, and, to be able to answer these really tough questions, because they would literally throw me in these boardrooms of investors. And I would, it's like they could eat you alive if you didn't come prepared. So what happened was, because I had to spend all that time preparing for our investors, we got really good. Like I had a really good system and a really good strategy for scaling and all this good stuff. And pretty soon Facebook started taking notice, and they would say, "Hey, you're kind of beating out everybody else in your industry," which it's tough industry, hospitality. "What are you doing over there?" And so I started sharing kind of our methodology with Facebook. And because of that, we started getting some really cool resources and back-end information, which made my system stronger, and it all just fed into each other. So eventually I realized, holy crap, the power of advertising is so insane. And I knew that was going to be my path forward. So we got rid of all of our other services, focused on this. Eventually we, got so good with our clients that we wanted to bring it to the masses. And that's where we're at today. We have a really affordable membership way for small business owners to learn how to do their own ads. Super phenomenal, simple, easy system. People come to us and they say, in the last 42 hours, I've gotten more leads in my company than I've ever gotten, kind of winging it or trying to do this myself. So all of that has led us to where we're at today, which is teaching ads, and we love it so much.
Wow. Well, take me back to before all the ads and all the social media. Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was just the kid with a million businesses. My most noteworthy one was probably when I was a teenager, 14, 15 years old, somewhere in that range. I had a cosmetics company that I decided to take online. So it's retail arbitrage. I would go into Target and Walmart and find all the clearance stuff. And then I had this little email list that I was developing because I had a zine. Did you remember the days of zines? Did you ever subscribe to them?
No. What are zines?
Zines were the first email like newsletters. And so I had this little teen zine, and it's a magazine, but online you would call it a zine. And so I had this I would like share my thoughts, and teenagers would email me and say, Tara, can I subscribe to your zine? And so then I started selling these cosmetics. And by the way, this was before HTML email. So you literally it was just copy. So I would say, all right, ladies, this week I have, Revlon's nail polish color, whatever. This beautiful crimson is perfect for fall. And they would reply back to my email and say, okay, I want to order one or two. And then I would mail it to them. And then they would mail me a paper check, or their parents would. So this was
Oh
way
my
back.
gosh.
Well, Cosmo Girl, which was the teenage version of Cosmopolitan, they learned about me and they featured me. So I got this huge influx of subscribers, and suddenly I needed a wholesaler. And all of this was just via email and just plain copy, no pictures, nothing. That stuff didn't exist. Payment processing didn't exist in any sort of accessible way. It was all just like the Wild West of the online world, way back when, 20 years ago, I guess.
Oh my gosh. You were 15?
Yeah, 14, 15, somewhere in that range. I should look at the exact date when I first started, but somewhere in there.
Okay. So was there ever anyone who didn't send you the check? Like you're giving them the product before you got the payment?
Yes. No, never, never. I would have a little follow up if like, hey, your account is over, 30 days past due. I need you to send this, or have your parents send me the check. But everyone always made good on their.
Wow. What did your parents think when all this was happening?
I mean, they were just kind of like, what is she doing? But suddenly, there's just like these little checks coming in the mail. And I mean, this was for nail polish, Emily. It might have been $3. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But there would be a lot of it. Like some days I would be sending out 20 orders. So, and you can imagine when eBay came around, I was all over that, right? So I loved the internet from the get-go. And I loved figuring it out, like how to sell to people, things that they wanted. And yeah, I think
I'm totally fascinated. So how did you even come up with this idea at 14, 15?
Well, I think I just saw the clearance section and I had this little zine, right? So what would I write about? I would write about, the best babysitting tips, or how to make money. Oh, it was always about how to make money for sure. Like how to make money in your neighborhood. It was like for teenage entrepreneurs, like you could have a car wash business, or you could bake cookies, like all the stuff I did. I had like a card rotation. I had car washing in the summer, which I would hire out the neighborhood girls because I just figured out my job was to manage it, so I like, hey, you're going to the Blackmans this week, and you're going over to the Owens, and you're washing their car, and then go to this house. So I just kind of learned like I could sell. And so I would just sell things and have people do the work, and everyone is a win-win. So I always wrote about that in my zine. And then one day I was just in the clearance section. I was like, hey, I bet I could sell this stuff for the full retail price. I'm getting the discount. I could sell it for full retail. And then I started figuring out you could add coupons onto it, make it even cheaper. Yeah, that's how I think.
My jaw's on the floor. So were your parents business owners?
No. So I come from, there definitely is an entrepreneurial strain in my family. Like I definitely come from, kind of a, I wouldn't say like, no, I mean, not in any sense of like true, but I do have like, there is like some family history of entrepreneurship and a lot of salesmen too.
Okay.
I guess there was that.
Yeah. So where do you think these characteristics came from?
Oh, I would assume some of it from that, just like that sort of DNA transfer or
Wow.
something. But I don't know. I think you're just born to be what you're going to be.
Mm.
I always wanted to write, and so and I love to write. So I kind of thought, oh, I'm meant to be a writer, and yet my real instinct was selling and creating little businesses all over the place, everywhere, just everywhere. And so I guess that. I guess I just, but I also love to write. So, these days, of course, it's all copywriting for me. And so I love doing my own copy and that sort of thing. I don't know if I'm the best at it, but I guess I'm okay at it because we do pretty well. But I feel like, it was just in me. I feel like I was
Those
just in that
instincts.
way. It was just going to be who I was going to be.
And then when you got into your late teens, did you end up going to college?
Yeah, I went to college and I studied journalism, switched to political science, and then got a master's degree in political science. So those were in sustainable development was my master's. I feel like those were kind of the lost years because I was trying to fit myself into, different roles, a government position and just various professional roles and yet in my mind, all right, so here's honestly what happened. In my mind, I just kept feeling this calling, this longing. Elsa in Frozen 2. Have you seen
Yeah.
Frozen 2?
Yeah.
That like, woo, that thing that just keeps calling to her. That's kind of what was happening to me. And one night, and I was at the time working in a government role, great future pension. I was really doing pretty well. It was like entry level, but I was moving up the little ladder. And I just, one night, this feeling, it just kept waking me up. And this is a pattern in my life. And I am definitely a faith-filled person. I'm a believer and I, very prayerful and that sort of thing. And I literally just woke up with this this feeling. And I just prayed and I said, okay, all right, Heavenly Father, God, here's the deal. I feel like there's a future for me in doing my own thing. I don't want to do it though, because that's not the safe road and what everybody tells me. And I have this government role and I could really make a career here and I could have a pension. And so what I did was I made a deal and I just said, and I am now thinking through how many deals I've made with God. And my part of it never works out. God's part always does, right? But I made a deal and I said, all right, I'm going to write one query letter. I will send one letter. I'll get up right now and I'll write it. It's 2 or 3 in the morning, middle of the night. I can't remember exactly what time. I get up and I write this query letter to a magazine. And I said, I have zero anything published in the last several years. Last thing I had published was as a teenager, basically. And I just said, all right, so, here's my idea. I think of an article idea. I can't remember what it was. Here's my idea. Please let me know if you'd like me to write it. And I send it to this magazine. And I said, all right, if I get that, then I will pursue my own independent career. I didn't know at the time it would be this entrepreneurship journey. If I don't get it, I get to stay in the government and I just do a normal 9 to 5. I'll be perfectly content. 10 days later, the editor-in-chief calls me and says, I love the idea. Will you write it in 30 days? And I was like, oh gosh, that kind of set me off on this whole new track and I fought it, and eventually just came around to, all right, I better just, I feel like I'm going to really miss my shot at whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing if I don't just follow this path. So it was a totally like Elsa in Frozen 2, like something waking me up in the night and just having to do it.
Well, I do a lot of these interviews and honestly, we'll get to the Facebook ads and all of that, but I really, to some extent, could care less about Facebook ads. I really care about your story. And it's something that people share all the time. They're like, I had this little whisper, I heard this calling, I had this conversation with a friend and they made a suggestion. Like there's all this stuff that's leading us in that direction and pulling us. Yeah. And yet so many people for so many years do fight it, or they think it's not the safe route. Can I actually do this? And so there's this element of giving yourself permission to move forward with the dream. How did you finally do that? Was it when you got the article or what had to happen?
Oh man, I am not good at the permission side, to be honest with you. I just fight things and fight them so I have realized, and this is really bad. Hopefully in 3 or 4 years, we we have another chat and you say, what's your track record now? And I can report back something much better. But my track record for inspiration, like the kind of inspiration that really makes a difference, is about 18 months. So, another great example, I was living in Hawaii, finished my master's degree, had finally started the business. Business was going well. And for 18 months, I fought this inspiration that I needed to move back to the mainland and for the purpose of meeting my husband. And I was like, I am not leaving Hawaii. You send him here. If you want, I'm done. Like, Hawaii is my place. I'm done. I have my life. It's perfect. I'll be single the rest of my life if I need to be, but I am not leaving this paradise. And 18 months later, I finally act on this inspiration. There's a whole story to it, but I get to where I left that island kicking, screaming. My claws were planted in. It was a horrible, horrible departure. And I was bawling. I just did not want to move. And that where I felt I needed to move to was freaking Washington, D.C. Now, I'm living in Hawaii at the time. Washington, D.C. is a very different energy. And I am like, they are going to eat me alive there. This is not going to be good for my my whole like blissed out Zen state I've created for myself. And I make that deal again. All right, I'll move. I will move, God. I'm going to give it 1 year. And if I don't accomplish what it is I think I'm supposed to accomplish next, then I'm back to Hawaii. So we make this deal. I moved to DC. 3 weeks, 21 days after I got there, I met my husband, and it was love at first sight. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I waited on this decision for 18 months. I could have met him so much sooner, but it was like, yeah. So my track record is horrible, and I'm working to improve it, but it's like 18 months, and it is kicking, screaming, fighting, negotiating. It's all these deals. And why do I fight it? I've had so many good, wonderful things happen from just listening when I finally listen, and yet I still fight it. So probably.
Well, let me break this down a little bit more because I have some thoughts. So first of all, why were you in Hawaii in the first place?
Getting my master's degree. And then I started my first company, which was a social media management company there.
Okay. So you graduated from college and you made the deal about, you got the job and you made the deal about the article. And then after that, you moved to Hawaii to get your master's.
Yep. So I was kind of dabbling with some kind of freelance stuff. Again, I didn't know the whole entrepreneur experience that was available to me. So it was kind of figuring out like, maybe I'll be a freelance writer. Maybe that's what the thing is. So definitely starting to dabble, and then get to Hawaii, pursuing my master's degree, really probably just trying to figure out what my next step was. And education is always a good filler, you know? And then, and obviously, who doesn't love to learn and grow in that way? So it was great. But I kind of knew the whole time, like, this is kind of just what I'm filling my time with as I try to figure out what in the heck I'm supposed to be doing. And finally started a social media management company after I graduated. Things were going great. And then inspiration hit. You're supposed to move. And I was like, what? No.
And how did that inspiration hit? Can you tell us a little bit more? Was that another, in the middle of the night experience?
Well, I'm just a big prayer, to be honest with you. My true process is pretty boring. I literally get on my knees every night before bed and every morning when I wake up, and I say a prayer. And now I'm a mom. So sometimes, I escape the house. I wake up kind of early and I just go out by myself, and I'll just pray while I walk, but just have a literal conversation. And I just pray. I always start with gratitude, and then whatever's on my mind, a challenge, usually with business. Of course, business is full of challenges. How do I overcome this? What's my fastest path to, get through this, whatever situation. And then, that's it. I just listen. I do a lot of asking and a lot of listening. Yeah,
I think this is so important. And we talk about this in all of our programs and with our clients. And So often people are questioning what the next step is or how they handle something. And that's exactly what I recommend people do. You literally
Yeah.
just ask the question and then you listen for the answer. And everyone calls it something different. Some people call
Yeah.
it prayer, some people call it meditation, some people say, that's just their inner voice.
Sure.
But I believe that like the answer is right there. And we do often make it far too difficult. And we forget that there is this resource that we can turn to that's within, instead of looking for something outside of ourselves or following what somebody else is doing. And it's like this whole untapped like potential and process and way of getting clarity.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
And so you specifically heard not only do you need to move, but you need to move to DC.
Oh man. Yeah. So when I finally, about halfway through that 18-month journey, I was like, all right, I guess I can move. Will it be California or LA? I couldn't imagine anything further east, like that just seemed like if you live in Hawaii, that's kind of the edge of where you would move to, because everything east is going to be a totally different energy, way too crazy. And so, I'm just trying to figure out, I actually took a trip with one of my best girlfriends over to California, and it just this feeling. Anyways, one day I finally figured out, well, where am I supposed to move? California is not feeling like that's the place. And overwhelmingly, I mean, that was a true voice that I heard. It was, you're going to DC. And I was like, oh no, I'm not.
And so did you take the social media agency with you?
Yeah. So I actually had brought on a partner for that agency at the time. So she took the company and I restarted once I got to DC. And that's where I developed out what I would say was my first real business, where I had a team, I had processes, I had manuals and SOPs, and because we were starting to work with a good number of clients. So that's where things got moved beyond me, meaning they moved beyond my time, my capacity, my skill sets. And I started developing services that I couldn't even execute, but that were needed by the market. And so that's where I feel like my real first business was born, and where it grew, and where, and that's the same business that eventually took us to where we're at today. We first grew it with a ton of services and then shrunk it down to just advertising, and then changed the model of how we did it. We served a lot of clients and then fewer clients with bigger budgets. And then now we're really focusing down to just the education model. So this company has had so many beautiful evolutions, but yeah, it all began when I finally made that big move to DC.
And so when you say that you started to provide services that the market needed that you didn't actually know how to do, what does that mean?
So people, first we took on social media. I knew social media, that felt really comfortable. And then our clients started asking, well, can you do SEO? Well, sure. And I'm a yes girl, right?
Yep.
Of course. I suspect you are too. Yeah, we can do that. Of course we can do that. And then I'd scramble on the back end, like, who do I know that can do SEO really well, and trying to find the right team members. So I kind of started realizing or seeing that vision, like, oh, this is how you build a business, not a freelance career, not a solopreneur career. This is how you build like a thriving business with employees, and you develop a menu of services and you find team members who can do those, and you manage them, or eventually you find somebody to manage them. But it was mostly just saying yes to a bunch of stuff. And I think that really grew us to a certain point. And then I realized there's like an inflection point where saying yes gets you a lot. It gets you really, really far down the road. And then it becomes actually what's the word? Like a handicap, I guess, where saying yes totally cripples you. And then you need to start saying no. And that's where we're at right now. It's like the more we say no, the more we're able to grow and be focused. So yes was really an amazing tool. And now no is the tool that we lean on.
So interesting. And in the beginning, where were most of your clients coming from?
Well, I had some great network back in Hawaii. So we definitely, I had a lot of people that just heard about my reputation there who came calling and asking for social media, which then of course developed into other things. Like I mentioned, the SEO or the, web design, that sort of thing. And also just networking. I mean, I've never been afraid to get out locally. I heard this great quote once. If you can't make $1 million in your own zip code, then then you need to figure it out. like,
Right.
like
Just right there. Yeah.
everyone should be able to make $1 million in their own zip code. And sometimes I think, you and I, especially being so much in the online space, it feels like online, but holy cow, I signed a lot of clients just from getting out to the right networking meetings and meeting people and talking about my services, or picking up a phone and calling and saying, I'd love to work with your company. Could I come and present on what I think I could do to improve your whatever, your revenue, your
Right.
team? Yeah,
And
picking up the
so,
phone is powerful.
yeah, I agree completely. And so, at some point you do have a lot of clients, you're doing the SEO services, the social media, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so what, we've already talked about a bit about giving yourself permission. What did it take for you to give yourself permission to pivot and to just focus on Facebook ads? Was that a quicker pivot, or did that still
Yeah.
take the 18 months?
That one took a little bit long. I mean, it was not as long as the 18 months, and mostly it was helped along by burnout, and also at the time I became a mother. So around this time in that journey of needing to start narrowing down, I had just become a new mom. I gave myself a 3-week maternity leave, and which is, by the way, anyone listening, that is not enough time. You are a strong woman. Yes, you absolutely are. My mindset was, I'm stronger than the average bear. I can do this.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with that little baby who needs to eat every couple of hours. I just had no clue. So I took a 3-week maternity leave. And one of the most powerful things happened in my business. I'm so grateful to this day for this really hard experience. I came back 3 weeks after this very short maternity leave. I had a baby that had been in the NICU for 1 week of that. So I had this precious little baby at home. I had no clue. She was a preemie baby. She needed to eat all the time, just different nutritional needs because her stomach was so tiny. And I came back to what I thought would be this really expansive, beautiful, everybody just loves you and your new baby. And that was not my experience. I came back to a hornet's nest of angry clients, absolutely furious clients. In that 3 weeks I was gone, almost everything broke. Now, what I did wrong was I had never really done longer than a couple of days of vacation. And so my team was trying their best, bless their hearts, but literally they were like, we don't know. We have to wait till Tara comes back. So I come back to just a swarm of angry clients. And what happened was I started getting text messages. Hey, Tara, I know you're on maternity leave. I know you're, just coming back from maternity. I hate to add this to your plate, but we have X, Y, and Z challenge, X, Y, and Z emergency, all this stuff. Like, for some reason, everybody was mad about something. And I was in a situation where I've never been like this before. I had to tell all of them, I will fix your problem, but this could take me 3 to 6 weeks. And, imagine client business where you feel like people are just constantly demanding things of you. And here I am telling them, you're going to need to give me 3 to 6 weeks. And this beautiful thing happened. I honestly thought we were losing the business. Everyone was so angry. And what actually happened was they said, okay, I'm really frustrated, but thank you for responding. And that sounds fine. And so in that moment, I realized, oh, this is just relationships. Like, all I'm doing is, this is all relationships. Like, it's okay for a relationship to go off to go off track a little bit, as long as you tell people what's going on. And so everyone was really upset. And yet I didn't lose any one of those clients, and I thought I was losing all of them. For the first time in my business, I actually exhaled. Here I had been holding all of this on my shoulders, and I was like, oh, I get it. We can go through a really hard time. We can go through a really, bad revenue month. We can go through all of these really tough obstacles. And you know what? This is business. You will go through those things and you can get through it. And ever since that moment, I was so wound up. I mean, I've never been more stressed out in my whole life. And then when I didn't lose any of those clients, and even if I had, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. What I built was stronger than what I thought. It was also weaker than what I thought because, I left for those 3 weeks and everything fell apart. Well, for my next maternity leave, I took 4 months. And I came back to the most beautiful business. My team had actually grown it while I was away. So what I did differently was I learned that you have to kind of do these test runs. So I do 2 days away and a week away and 14 days away. We did so many test runs. And the first few times I did these test runs, well, there were problems. There were like little things that would break. I would just say, okay, team, let's make a process for this so this doesn't happen. I do another test run. We did so many test runs that pretty soon they were running the thing just fine without me. In fact, probably better than with me around.
Wow, what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. I want to break this down a little bit more for the listeners, but I mean, everything you said was brilliant. So what was the period of time between the first baby and the second?
So 2 years, two-ish years.
Okay.
It was 2. Yeah, 2 years.
And so after the first one, I'm sorry, I forget her name.
Haley. So Hazel's my oldest, and then Haley's my brand new one.
So after Hazel, you had this amazing epiphany and experience around being able to exhale and recognizing you're not going to lose these clients.
Yeah.
So what were some of the first steps that you took to start to transform the business in terms of the weaknesses that you had identified?
Oh man. Well, first I had to get through that. And the first thing I realized was I have, what did we have? 11 or 12 services at the time. Like I said, we were doing everything and I was scared to do it, but out of desperation, and I realized we've got to close down some of these services and focus only on what it is we want to focus on. So that's when we got rid of all the marketing stuff. And we did a good job at it, but it was so much management. And I realized, maybe if it was a different season of life, I could have figured that out differently. But I was like, this has got to go, or I really will lose everything because I cannot keep all these balls in the air. I hadn't put the right systems or team responsibilities in place for us to keep going like that for very long. So got rid of that. And that was scary, but fine. We basically, our revenue at that point, just to anchor this in for anyone listening, I think we were doing about $30,000 a month in marketing, and maybe it was even more. Maybe it was like 40. Anyways, it might have been like $60,000 to $70,000 a month in total services we were doing. So we got rid of like $30,000 or $40,000 of those services. So I was sweating bullets, but I was like, I can't keep running this how we were. And so we focused on the advertising side. And within 3 months, we had built the ad side up to where it had totally replaced the marketing side. So we're doing, $60,000, $70,000 a month in ads, in management fees.
And was that through new clients, or did your social media clients move into needing Facebook ads?
Yep, exactly. So some of them transferred over and some of them we just released because it was just time. And so, so that, that gave me a lot of confidence. I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like we can scale down or focus down to scale up. So that gave me a lot more confidence to be able to make some later adjustments in my business. But that was the first big one I made. I was so scared. But I realized that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, you're going to be successful no matter what you do. If this all fell apart for me, Emily, I'd probably go open an Amazon store or Shopify. Like I would just do something else. But I have the skill set that would make me successful no matter what. So that was kind of that realization, like, oh, it doesn't really matter what we do as long as we love it and we get good results. We know how to grow a business. That's actually the most important skill.
Totally. And one of the things that comes to mind for me is David Nagel from the stage and I Heart My Life
Mm,
Live. And he was talking about the fact that the definition of wealth is not having money in the bank, but it's being able to create wealth whenever
yes,
you want. And
exactly.
that's exactly what you're displaying here. Like we have such fatal thinking when it
Yep.
comes to our business, like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. Everyone's going to die. Like the company's going to die. And you have to really follow that fear and recognize that if you know what you're doing, you'll just do it again and probably better, probably faster. You've built
Yep.
a network to help you build it back up. And so I think that when we look at things in that perspective, it makes it so much less scary when it is time to pivot or turn something off.
I would even argue your first thing that you create is probably the hardest thing you will ever create or sell. And that
Yeah.
might not be the case for everybody, but that first thing does not have the experience, the refinement of what years of business will give you. So it's almost like if you're still stuck on that first thing, you're probably making things a lot harder than they need to be.
Right. So it sounds like you started to give yourself permission quicker and quicker. You gave yourself permission to make the pivot, to shut this down, to turn off like half of your revenue
Yeah.
because you knew that you needed to get focused. And so then what happened next? You rebuilt the company or you rebuilt
Mhm.
that revenue through Facebook ads. And then what?
Yep. And then I realized, I love what we do for clients. I wish we could help all of these other entrepreneurs that are not in a place where they should be even considering hiring their ads. I always say, unless you're spending at least $5,000 a month, it makes zero financial sense to be hiring this stuff out. So I realized there was a gap. I don't know if I'm the best at it, but I love looking at the marketplace and saying, where's the gap? Or where are there products and services, but really crappy ones that I think I could improve?
Right.
And so for me, I saw a gap in the marketplace, tons of courses on Facebook ads and stuff like that. And I didn't even consider a membership model for a long time. But because there were so many courses, and what I saw coming out of those courses was people booking in, $500 consultation calls with me and saying, I took so and so's course last year, but the algorithm changed or everything, I don't even know where those buttons are anymore or this or that. And I was like, I see like these courses are giving people relevant information for a very small period of time. What happens is Facebook changes the algorithm literally. We have reports of every 6 weeks that algorithm changes. So I was like, well, where's the ongoing education that is actually good, that actually gets results, that actually converts? Because I'll tell you, the way Facebook would have you run your ads is very beginner friendly and very bad for your bottom line. I mean, it's just, you may as well just send them. You may as well just like literally burn up your own cash if you want. The way that they tell you to run ads is just, it's awful. And so, I was like, where's the relevant information for people who aren't in a place they should be hiring it out and who need ongoing education to keep up with this stuff? And that's where I realized, like, finally it hit me over the head. I was like, oh my gosh, I could create this. We could have a membership, a monthly model. We tell people every month what they need to know. When that algorithm changes, we're there for them. And I think that it's a need that people are really resonating with because it's it's doing well. So I feel like that was kind of our next shift, and our bigger pivot there, Emily, is being confident enough to just go all in on that. And that's kind of where, full transparency, that's where we're at now. Is we've got our client base, but we're starting to whittle that down a lot and just focus on those few clients who were really in deep with their business. They're spending a ton of money. So they need, a really solid team who's there and not going to let anything fall through the cracks. And then we're focusing more and more on bringing this education to the bigger market.
I love it. And you and I have talked about the fact that memberships are a whole different ball game.
Oh
And
man.
so I'm sure that there was a learning curve for you guys. What was
Oh,
that experience like?
memberships are definitely, there's so many technical things we could get into, and I'm still learning the business model. What I know about memberships is that I love the structure. I love it so much. I love the affordability factor. I love that we have hundreds of case studies of people who come in and within 48 hours or the first week, they've completely turned around their lead generation experience. Maybe they were, trying to wing it by themselves, and they'll come in, learn the structure, get that system in place, and they're off to the races. So what I know is I love that. And then learning the whole business side of it has been the learning curve, because you've got to consider your cash flow. So for example, let's say if it costs you, $60 to acquire, and hopefully this will be helpful because I know some of your listeners have or are considering membership models. But if, for example, let's say it costs you $60 to acquire a new member, but they pay $30 a month. Well, that means you're not going to recoup your acquisition cost on that until they've been a member for 2 months. So you wouldn't see any profitability on that until month 3 or 4. Now, I'm just using fictitious numbers, but that's the kind of business model we've had to learn. Like, oh, you've got this whole cash flow thing, and you're counting on future, you're counting on like their future retention, your future retention of them. So it's been interesting. It's been a real learning curve, but it's been cool too. I mean, there's a lot of challenges to it, and I love a good challenge. So, here's a good challenge for anyone with memberships. How can you have break even or even a little bit of profitability on month 1? What do you need to do to be able to achieve that? So that way, then if your retention is 4, 6, 8 months, it's all profit after that. So there's a lot to unlock there, but that's been the fun challenge we've been working on.
Yeah. And I think one of the other challenges is the volume, because, when we deal with higher priced clients and packages and fewer people, that's one thing. But then when you get into hundreds of people paying small amounts, potentially wanting to cancel, all of that, like it's just a whole different ballgame in terms of metrics and tracking and bookkeeping.
Yeah, absolutely. And the messaging, I mean, there's a marketing challenge there as well of being affordable and yet the perception of very high value.
Right.
So if you were a course, you would be a $2,000 course. So how do you break that down to where the perception is that, yeah, you are that value, and yet you're also very affordable? So I think there's a lot of really interesting marketing challenges with memberships. Every model has its own little things you get to unlock, right? But those are some of the ones for membership models. So if anyone is listening and you have a membership model, I'm sure you're knee deep in figuring out those things for yourself as well.
Yeah. And like you said, all this stuff, it takes time. And I think so often for entrepreneurs, we are chopping and changing. We're getting another bit of inspiration every single day. We have a creative idea that we want to put in place. And I think what you're illustrating so beautifully is also this element of we need to build on the stage before, and we need to perfect is not the right word, but we need to really understand the market and build on what we've created and not consistently go from one thing to the next. I hope that everyone listening is getting that, because you have developed a consistency, and it's not always going to be easy. It very rarely is. But as you learn more and you grow, then you tweak and you perfect and you go to the next level.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And it takes, I really believe you have to commit to things for years, because the first time somebody hears about it, like you might get a few little bites, but you've got to bring that message home over and over and over again for, years to gain that momentum. I won't share the name of who I'm thinking of, because I can't speak to the exact numbers. I can't remember what the exact numbers were. Very well-known entrepreneur, though, was speaking recently and said that his first launch of what is now a wildly popular product was $30,000. Next launch, 60. And now it's definitely above $5 million per launch. But he had to bring that messaging home over and over and over again, keep talking about it, keep sharing the testimonials and the case studies before he gained that real momentum. So if you launch something 3 or 4 times and you give up on it, does not sound like a good strategy to me.
Right. And I think sometimes people are trying to get their feet wet and figure out what it is that they actually love.
That is true.
And at the same time, the question I always ask myself is, if this was wildly successful, if this did eventually bring in the $5 million, would I love it? And
Oh,
sometimes just that simple tweak,
good.
yeah, it helps you get clear around, like, is this an issue right now because I'm not seeing the results I want, or is it an issue because it's not in alignment?
Holy cow, Emily, that is an amazing question. That is so good. I love that question.
Yeah. And I just think it's so beautiful that you've also illustrated for people that it's so important to fall in love with the challenge, because like you said, it's not always going to be a home run the first time. It very rarely is. I mean, we have people who are just now buying from us 6 years later. And I'm like, it doesn't take me 6 years to make a decision, but I know for some people it does. And that tells me something like, number one, how can we improve our marketing? And number two, it just takes that repetition for some people.
Yeah, totally. I love that. You really do. When you develop whatever your product or service is, you kind of get married to it, you know? So you need to, well, I shouldn't say marriage, because I feel like marriage is forever, and definitely we shift our products and services, but you develop a really good long-term friendship with it, let's say. So you need to kind of be committed to it for the long haul.
Totally. And one of these pieces I'd love to ask you about, Tara, is about challenge, because I know for me, for so many years, I was resistant to challenge, and I thought that I could like positive think myself away from challenge and that it wouldn't be a part of our process or our business. And that's absolutely not the truth. If I had one word for last year, it would be chaotic. I've already told you this, and full of challenge. And so how did you start to develop a love of challenge, or at least we don't even have to say love, but like not being resistance to it?
Oh, well, all that journey that we just talked about, and thank you for pulling that out of me. I've not shared hardly any of that ever, Emily. So that was really fun. I hope that it doesn't get too windy for people to figure out. But all of that story definitely, brought me to a place where, honestly, it was that thing. It was that moment when everyone was mad at me and I thought I was losing my business. And it was kind of like, oh crap. And then what would I do? And it was like, oh, okay, I just rebuild something else. And then I didn't lose the business. And I just felt like I exhaled. I just realized, oh, it is totally fine to think it's all going to fall apart. It is totally fine. And if it had, that would have been fine too. If I really had lost all of my clients, that would have been fine too. I would have gone on and done something else. But it was just that realization. I kind of feel like you kind of just have to almost lose it all. And then you get to that place where you're like, oh, I'm still the same person. I would just rebuild it. I've got all these skills. It's all right. And for those of you who haven't experienced a moment like that, I mean, you probably will. And I'll say this too. Hopefully you will. For your own sanity, I hope you do. Because it will make everything so different for you. And then you'll realize that you are an entrepreneur that can build anything you want, and that you have it all inside of you to be successful, no matter what you're doing. So if you have one product or service that fails, it doesn't matter. You're an entrepreneur. You're going to figure something else out to do. So I would just say it was that moment for me.
Yeah.
Now I feel really cozy with it. It's like, oh, whatever, challenge. Oh, crap. Revenue wasn't very good last month. Let's look at our metrics. There's some real practical things you need to do. Budget metric, cash flow analysis, alerting your team if it looks really dire. I wouldn't recommend hiding this stuff from your team, but you want to give them like fair warning, number one, to contribute, and number two, to start planning for their future if they need to. So if things look really bad, you need to, there's just like some leadership things you've got to do.
Mm-hmm. And would you say, so, when we had the conversation around the resistance around the 18 months and not moving forward with those decisions as quickly, would you say that you've developed more trust within yourself and that inner guidance to act quicker at this point?
My timeline is still the same, but I feel but I sit with it longer, but I feel more confident, if that makes sense. So it's more like the like that clawing feeling of my soul has gone away. But oh man, I've got to make a change. I tend to sit with it longer, but more peacefully. So
interesting.
my timeline is still, unless I'm being forced by desperation, such as in the case with my first maternity leave, which was pure like, whoa, this is getting really intense and I do not have the emotional bandwidth for this. So that was pure like practicality. I got to move fast right now. Otherwise, if I have time, I still sit on the log for a really long time.
Do you like that about yourself?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm comfortable with that about myself, but if I could magically change it, I probably would.
I think we'll
Ooh.
have a conversation about that next time we meet.
We ought to.
So what would you say for those new entrepreneurs? Because I know well, why don't you tell us, Tara, who is your specialty? Who do you love to work with in the membership?
Oh gosh, our members range from, all different business models and revenue. Revenue ranges too from people who are brand new, people who have $5 million businesses, but very offline and they're looking for new lead generation channels. So I feel like best our best members are the ones who just like to learn and get in there and figure it out. And even if they're scared, it's like within 2 hours, they know if they just go through it and put this system in place, they're going to see results. Those are my favorite people. So what would you call that? Gritty. I like the people with grit.
Yeah. Yeah, that figure it out attitude, and they're willing to go into it even when the fear is there, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, those are our favorite clients as well.
100%.
And so when you have when someone comes into your program, I personally experienced it. We've sent clients your way as well. And I know I can attest for how incredible it is. When you send people into the program, what is some of the things that surprises them about Facebook ads that maybe they wouldn't have learned otherwise?
They get totally addicted. It is very addicting. So spending money at first is scary if you haven't done it. But when you see, the best example here is our offline clients, right? Maybe they're doing mailers to zip codes, you mailing out postcards or something. You kind of don't know the reach of that for a few months because it's like, 3 months later, somebody calls you, hey, I saw your thing and I put it in my drawer and I just pulled it out. So when you get into digital marketing, specifically Instagram, Facebook ads, Google ads, LinkedIn, Pinterest, whatever the ad platform, and you start seeing results come in literally. I launched an ad this morning and within an hour I had 5 leads. Okay, so that's the kind of like addiction that you get. It's like, oh, I just want to refresh this all day.
Yeah.
And watch these leads come in. And then you can see them go through your email sequences and, oh, they opened it and, oh, they clicked on the call to action. I just think that stuff is so addicting. And that's the best surprise is when somebody's like, I can't believe I actually love this and I never want to outsource it. We often have to kick people out of the nest and be like, you're spending $10,000 a month. You are booked like crazy. It's time. You need to give this over to someone. They're like, oh, it's so fun. It's the best part of my business.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing to hear because I've personally dabbled in Facebook ads and couldn't wait to outsource that. But I also know that financially it's a big decision and consideration for people. And like you said, unless you're spending a certain amount, you should not be spending money on outsourcing it, most likely. And so I love that you have this alternative for people at that stage.
Yeah, thank you. It's so fun. It's so fun.
Awesome. So my final question for you is something that we ask all of our guests. I'd love for you to share one way in which our audience and our listeners can create a life that's better than their dreams.
Oh my goodness. There are so many ways to this. And Emily, listen to Emily. Listen to your story. Your story is so inspiring and how you moved from Ohio to London and met James and just everything about it. You definitely had the Elsa Frozen to like, woo thing going on. So and kind of going with that theme, like you got to follow those calls to the letter and ideally don't wait on them like I do. Don't take the 18 months. They always serve me well, but I sit on them longer than I should. Just figure out about yourself how to get brave and do things that you feel called to do. And that seems really simple, but don't you think, Emily, that's what makes all the difference?
Totally. And I think we're given these desires and these little whispers and callings for a reason. And a lot of people think, oh no, I could never do that, or that's not possible for me. But I believe that it's a part of you. And so you already have the ability there. And if you don't know the answer, you will figure out the how, and you can find people to help you. And so I think there needs to be an element of trust there, that when we start to get that calling, we trust ourselves enough and trust it that it's the truth, and we take that action.
Oh, you said it better than I ever could have. This is why you do what you do.
Awesome, Tara. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. I know that people are going to hugely benefit from hearing your words and seeing everything that you've achieved. And honestly, I'm so inspired by what you've created, and even that nugget around doing the test runs for those of us who don't yet have children, but have businesses and are wondering, like, how in the world do we do that? That's a huge takeaway for me.
I'm so happy. Yes. That honestly, everybody do a test run. Just start. Actually, they're really fun to do as well. You'll get used to it, and then you'll be looking forward to your next one.
Well, yeah. And I mean, everyone wants to take more time off. So whether you're having a baby or not, like, do your test runs. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Awesome, Tara. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Emily.
I hope you loved today's episode. Honestly, it was one of my absolute favorites. I love Tara. I love her story and the way in which she told it. And honestly, she said she hasn't actually shared it in that way ever before. So we got the special story. We got to hear all the dirt, and I'm so, so grateful for her time. So if you were looking for someone to support you in your own Facebook ads and you're not ready to hire a specialist, definitely check out Tara's Successful Ads Club. I send all my clients her way. So go to bit.ly IHML Tara, Tara, and get more information about joining that program. They have a special opportunity for you to get in for a tiny amount of money just to try it out. So there's really no reason not to do at least that. And then I'm sure you're going to love it. You're going to feel fully supported and get all the information you need about your own Facebook ads. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the I Heart My Life show. For more inspiration, success tips, and ways to achieve your life and business goals, definitely follow me on Facebook and Instagram on I Heart My Life Now. See you next time.